It's 2025 and a new year means brand new opportunities. And for a lot of you out there, I know you've been thinking about one thing over the holidays, and that is starting your own business. But you have so many questions like how do I get started? How do I come up with a brand? How do I even sell stuff to people? And what am I even going to sell? Now take a deep breath. Shopify has got you. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. And you can get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. You don't have to be a coding nerd or a design geek to get this done. All you need to do is drag and drop. Shopify also helps with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard, so you can focus on the important stuff, like growing your business. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/truecrime, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/truecrime to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/truecrime.
I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
And this is The Prosecutor's Legal Briefs.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Prosecutor's Legal Briefs. I know it's weird to hear my voice first, but Alice is on her way to Alaska on a trip that's going to take like 20 hours. So we wanted to do some sort of instant reaction to the hearing today, the big hearing in the Delphi case. And we thought, what are we going to do? Who can we look to for expertise? Who might be able to help us on this? And who better than Bob Motta, the awesome host of the Defense Diaries, who was actually there today. So we're so excited to have Bob on the show. Hello, Bob. Introduce yourself. Say whatever you want to say, as long as it's not too critical of us.
No, I actually adore you guys. I'm super excited to join you. So I was thrilled. I was actually coming back. I had gone down to Delphi. I had decided last night. I knew I was going to go, but I was still waffling because I didn't know if I'd be able to get in because of the whole fact that the documents are sealed. So I didn't know how the judge was going to handle that aspect. So when you hit me up, I was on my ride home, man. I was thrilled. I was over the moon to be able to join you. I've been dying to do this with you because it's such a good fit. I mean, prosecutor, former defense attorney. I think we'll have a blast. I think we'll have a really amazing conversation and we can kind of play off each other. So I'm really looking forward to it. If y'all don't know me, I have a little podcast called Defense Diaries. We are currently about halfway through our second season. It is unlike Brett and Alice's, where I know they'll do some 5-6 episodes on some of the bigger cases, but we're serialized. So it's one season is a long run. Our first season went 36 episodes. in retrospect, I would have done 2 separate seasons of that. I would have broken it up, but it was fluid. I just didn't know how long it was going to go, so. But we're very proud of what we put out. We feel like it was interesting. And because my father, if you guys don't know, was Gacy's lawyer back in 78, and he'd left me all his taped interviews, which Gacy had waived privilege. So that allowed me to be able to play them for everybody out there, the public, because I thought they were interesting. And we just interwove them within a narrative, trying not to focus on Gacy because that's been done over ad nauseum so many times. I really wanted to try to focus on the victims for once, because I never heard anything about the victims. In 43 years, I'd followed everything about that case, never knew anything about any of the victims. I wanted to follow the investigation, the arrest, and the trial. Those were the things that we focused on. And I do want to throw a rest in peace out there because a prosecutor who I admired massively just passed away. Bill Kunkel, who was the lead prosecutor on the Gacy case, just passed away on Sunday. At 81 years old. The man was a wonderful human being, and he was an amazing public servant, and he did a lot of good when he was serving the public. So he's greatly missed. And I was lucky enough to talk him into reading his entire, really performing at 81 years old, his entire closing argument that he gave at trial. That's how we ended the season, and it was incredibly moving, man. So I do want to say rest in peace to Bill Kunkel, and thank you, Brett, for having me. And that's my spiel.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. And as you can see, this is something we always talk about. Prosecutors and defense attorneys have a lot of respect for each other when they're both good at what they do and honest and straightforward. And I
100%.
know it's hard for some of y'all to believe that they're honest and straightforward lawyers out there, but they really are.
There really are. Just on both sides of the aisle, there really are. There's people
And
that actually care about justice. And, I mean, the thing is that we need both sides to work for
Right.
justice to work. It's like prosecutors don't want a bum on the other side of the aisle because inevitably that, you worry about an appeal. If the guy was
100%.
ineffective on the other side, as a prosecutor, you want somebody that's doing the job properly so that that you had a good trial go down and everything was done properly. There's not going to be a bunch of appellate issues. That gives, I think, the prosecutors, on their side of it, it allows them to rest easier in terms of, the thing sticking. And you and I both know how difficult it is to overturn, a conviction in general, but still no one wants to go through that.
Yeah, a lot of times the way it gets overturned is because the defense attorney is bad. I've been in a case once where the judge actually called the defense attorney up to him and was like, look, you're doing a terrible job. I'm really concerned that this is going to set up for an ineffective assistance counsel later on. You need to pick it up. And as the prosecutor, like you said, you're thinking, oh man, just get your act together.
Right.
The evidence
just
is there.
You're occasionally, just occasionally object at least, learn the rules of evidence so you can at least get something admitted, learn how to set foundation. If you can lay foundation, you object. I mean, even if you're a terrible lawyer, you'll probably pass. But if you do neither of those, I was fortunate to never have that experience. So
yeah, I know.
I was usually having the judge telling me to shut up, sit down.
And just to, sort of transition to what we're talking about today, the Delphi case, it seems like there's going to be some good defense attorneys on the other side. I mean, just watching sort of some of the stuff they did today, I feel like these guys know what they're doing. I
got that sense too. And look, I'm not one of those guys who rips on PDs. My father was a public defender for 14 years before he went to private practice. And the guy was a heck of an attorney, and anybody that got him was lucky to have him. I mean, he ran the felony courtroom at the big courthouse in Chicago at 26 and Cal, as it's affectionately known, for a long time. And he came into that case with Amaranti ready to go, like far more experienced in heavy duty trial work in terms of representing the worst of the worst, far more than Sam was. So yeah, when I saw these two guys, and I hadn't heard much from them in terms of anything preceding today's hearing, I had done a little research on their background. I knew they were both private guys that had been appointed. So I was hopeful that they were going to be competent. And I thought that was kind of the impetus behind it. And I know in Indiana that you have to be certified in order to handle death penalty cases. So, and I imagine that this will be one of those. So they need it. And I imagine in that county, because I was in that county today, it's small. It's
they probably don't even have, they might have a public defender who handles the DUIs, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, because people were wondering why they went out, why didn't they just assign a PD? I'm like, because they have other cases and this case is going to consume somebody for 2 years. That's the fact of the matter. And they just won't have time to handle all the other stuff on the docket. So
you were there. Why don't you just tell people, what it was like, sort of walk us through the day and how it all went down?
Yeah, so I should have left earlier, first and foremost. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get into the building because, as everybody probably knows, all the documents have been sealed. So the probable cause affidavit has been sealed as well as the charging documents. And, if you guys don't know what the probable cause affidavit is, that's basically where the state lays out their whole case in terms of the evidence they have. It's a lower burden, for probable cause in terms of getting an arrest warrant than they need in order to get a conviction. So, but they still have to have, a substantial amount of evidence in order for a judge to say, okay, I'm going to give you the arrest warrant. And then they'll either get it indicted through a grand jury or they'll have a preliminary hearing down the road. So I got down there not knowing whether or not they were going to let us into the courthouse, let alone the courtroom. Got down there, got into the courthouse, was super excited. I go running up. It's like a very small, beautiful little courthouse, and it's kind of got a rotunda. So it's like it's circular, and on every floor you can kind of look into the center, and beautiful old courtroom. So I go up there. There's about 5 people sitting out. I'm like, man, I'm going to walk right into this thing. This is unbelievable. I go in and there are armed police officers everywhere, SWAT guys. I mean, there was an intense police presence there. So I think they're legitimately concerned about that guy's well-being, Richard Allen, because the presence there was.
If you've read anything online, they should be. There's a lot of people who are just ready to go ahead and end this without any more proceedings.
Dude, I mean, he had a vest on, when they were bringing him in and out, he had a Kevlar vest on. So, I mean, they were seriously concerned. So I opened the door, and then of course there's two, like they seem to be SWAT guys. Like they weren't just regular, like plainclothes officer or plainclothes guys or just regular uniformed officers. They had some heavy artillery and they were ready. And they're like, are you an attorney? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, who you're, and I wasn't going to lie, obviously. He's like, who you're repping? I was contemplating saying, well, I'm representing one of the news agencies, but I know I couldn't do it. So I'm like, well, I was just coming in to observe. And he's like, nah, he's like, we're full. So it was a relatively small courtroom. I wasn't able to make it into the room. I was hoping that they were going to have maybe a closed circuit TV for overflow, or I could watch the proceedings in a different room. But the main thing is it didn't really matter if you could get in or not, because the judge, the chief judge, had put out a general order. Phones were verboten. There was no using your phones. They actually had in the general order, if your phone rings in the hearing, that they will destroy the phone.
Oh, wow.
So they were taking it very, very seriously.
That's worse than sending you to jail for a day.
Yeah. Exactly. That, like, talking about losing your lifeline. So like, I wouldn't have been able to live tweet in any, and that was really what I wanted to do, was get in there and live tweet, just because I have a different knowledge base than like your typical reporter. I would have been able to pretty accurately tell them what was going on in terms of my Twitter followers. So, but I hung in there. I went down to the clerk's office. I printed out all the documents that had been filed. I was able to get everything aside from the state's motion in support of sealing, because obviously that had information that was part of the information that's sealed. So I wasn't able to see that, but I got the media's brief in support of unsealing. And then I got the defense attorney's motion they filed at the 11th hour last night to modify the conditions of bond. So,
let's just walk through them in sort of order. Seems to me, I guess there are three things that are worth talking about. This whole thing to unseal the affidavit. The prosecution filed a motion for a gag order today, which is also interesting. I'd be interested to know what you think about that. And then obviously the bond request. Yeah. Starting with the motion to unseal the probable cause. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this, because where I practice, we do almost everything through grand jury. Yes. So, we do indictments. We almost never have probable cause hearings.
Exactly.
And so I was a little surprised that a probable cause hearing wasn't asked for and scheduled sooner in this case, since the arrest was made off of an affidavit. I just thought that would, as a matter of course, would happen quickly.
I felt the exact same way. I was shocked. And like when the story first dropped that they had made the arrest back on, like, when they took him into custody on the 26th, and then they ended up kind of arraigning him on the DL on the 28th. And then they had the presser on Halloween where they announced what happened, because they had done that. It was really on the down low. I had read the judge had scheduled a preliminary hearing. That's what I'm saying. Like, reporters just don't understand what they're hearing. Sometimes even seasoned crime beat guys like screw it up. And when I say guys, I mean men and women. I use that generically just so everybody knows out there. I quickly found out that they had not, that was just it was a pretrial conference where they're just going to come in and give, where they're at in discovery and filing the motion. So I felt the same way, man. I was stunned, and it still didn't get scheduled today.
The bond hearing is not until February.
Yeah. And that's on the bond. So that's what I want. Like, to me, that was the most fascinating part of it, because in Indiana for 150 years, they have, and Brett, you probably, in terms of your practicing, like, with a bond hearing for 150 years, it had been the burden of the defendant to show why they should get bond. It's like whenever you do that bond call, I'm coming up with all the reasons why they should let my guy out. He's got a family, he's got a job, he's got a support. So in 2013,
no danger.
Yeah, all that stuff. And in 2013, a case came down in the Indiana Supreme Court where they shifted the burden to the state. So the state actually has to have the burden, and I printed it out. this case, and I won't bore you guys with reading the case, but if anybody does care about, it's Fry v. State. And basically what it says is, additionally, the evidence cannot simply be statements by the prosecutor as to what the proof will or might be at trial. The prosecutor's assertion about evidence that he feels may be able to introduce are not proof, because what they require is proof that there's enough there for either a conviction. It's a pretty high burden.
Yeah,
it really is.
You can proffer the witness or the evidence.
It is. And so what's interesting is the interplay is it almost puts the state in position moving towards that bond hearing, that they have to move to unseal it. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to meet their burden.
Right.
Like that blew my mind, kind of. Like, I don't know that the defense thought of it, because it's not like that in Illinois. Like, that is not how it is. Like, it's done like where we just go in and we have to, because when you read the motion by the defendants when they filed it last night, it was a 2-pager, real short, and it's.
Yeah, I read it. I mean, it's like 3 paragraphs.
Yeah, it's bare bones, man. And all he did was cite the law in terms of exactly what it is, and so.
I wonder if that had the effect of making bond hearings, because where I'm from, you get a bond hearing almost immediately. But because the prosecution, I mean, the burden's pretty low. You just proffer the evidence, and then usually they don't get bond. But maybe because they do that in Indiana, that's why it sort of has the unintended consequence of now the prosecution has 3 months to prepare for a bond hearing, which is
a bond hearing.
Crazy. And maybe the bond hearing just sort of ends up serving the purposes, both a bond hearing and a probable cause hearing.
Exactly. So, because I was like, yeah, for us, it's the same. Like, typically it's the PD handling the bond call, because it's right after, like, as soon as the guy can get, like, if he gets arrested on a Friday, can't get in front of a judge, he's going to spend the weekend in. First thing Monday morning, he's going to get in front of the judge. And typically, if they haven't had the opportunity, if they're going to hire private counsel, they haven't gotten anybody because they've been in jail, or they haven't, they don't have the funds, or whatever the case may be. So the PD will handle it. It's pretty rare when I get contacted by somebody who wants to hire a private counsel where they've just been arrested, and I make it into the case early enough to handle the initial bond. I'm always having the conversation. I'll file a motion to modify bond, depending on what was said initially. Because it's like you said, it's like they're up there and they throw out the facts immediately, and in terms of what the grounds for the arrest were. And, and at that point, the PD's like, okay, well, tell me something about your family, your background. Do you do anything civically? Do you go to church? All the things you try to make the person sound like they're a decent human being. So,
right.
Man, it was, so that was surprising in terms of how they handled that. And like, I'm really curious how it's going to go moving forward, because of the way that they have it situated, where that burden is on the state. Like, I don't know how they're going to be able to do anything without unsealing it. And that's why I think she kicked it so long. She kicked the bond hearing so long, because I think she wants to sit on it for a while. I really do.
And people, as I've said, with my prosecutor hat on, it'd be great if you could do everything in secret and not have to share anything with the public, and never have the public involved, and not have to worry about reporters, particularly in a case like this. I mean, I've never been in a case like this. I mean, where there's so much attention.
Right.
But my sort of American citizen hat, it bothers me that stuff is done in secret. I have a big belief that one of the protections we have is we prosecute people in public. Right. And it's not just voyeurism or wanting to know all the salacious details. It's ensuring that this person who is innocent until they're proven guilty is being treated fairly, that there actually is probable cause for the arrest, that the judge is acting fairly, that the public can hold the judge to account if they're not acting fairly. And so, to me,
gee, Brett, you almost sound like a defense attorney there.
Hey, I'm just a fair guy, right? I'm just a fair guy.
Yeah,
what can I say?
So am I. And like, I think from the defense attorney's perspective, frankly, I mean, you and I are both in this community, and I know that there's been like a kind of a push that, they feel, because like somebody had said, like, and I don't know if it was the main investigator with the Indiana State Police, had said that they were worried that if it got out, that it might compromise the investigation. Now, subsequent to that, Doug Carter, who is the, superintendent for the Indiana State Police, like, flat out came and said, he's like, I don't believe that it'll affect at least the case against Richard Allen at all if they release it. So you've got kind of like these competing forces within the same office in terms of the Indiana State Police saying kind of two different things. And as a matter of fact, McClelland, who's the prosecutor on the Allen case, he submitted a letter from the main investigator in support of keeping it sealed, saying, I'm concerned, like we're worried about, the public. And it is a high profile case. It's different, because like when I handled that Garcia case in Omaha, it was very similar to this. It was just a brutal case. 11-year-old boy had been murdered and 3 other victims who were just upstanding, wonderful people that obviously didn't deserve to die. So, there was a massive media crush in that case. And I mean, they really tried my guy in the press for 3 years. They honestly did, the Omaha World Herald. So like, even because I'm with you, I want transparency. That's what the Constitution calls for. I mean, all trials are public. I mean, it's in stone, and you create that slippery slope where, okay, well, it's a high profile case. So now we have to worry about, should we release the information? Well, I think you have to. I think they're going to be hard pressed to keep it under wraps for much longer, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. And people online are like, well, are they going to try and have the whole trial in secret? No, they're not. No. That's impossible. They're keeping this stuff quiet as long as possible. They're playing out this string as long as possible. Eventually, yes, it's all going to come out. What's interesting is at the same time, a lot of this is getting ready to come out. Then you have the prosecution filing for a gag order.
Right.
And that it's interesting to me. I'm interested in your take on this because, as you noted in one of your cases, the prosecution tried that person in the press. And that is something you can do and sort of, basically setting up where every juror who comes in there thinks the guy's guilty. Right. And it's sort of a prove he's innocent place. Right. Which is not what you're supposed to do, but nevertheless, it happens. It happens. And so it's interesting that the prosecution is asking for a gag order, which would keep everyone from talking about it. Right. And doesn't mean the guy wouldn't be tried in the press, but it would be harder for the prosecution to direct that trial.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was unusual, and like in the Garcia case in Omaha, like it came up and like he put a gag order, but like the judge, because we had 2 judges. We had the first judge who he was over his skis a little bit. Like he had just not handled a case like that. And like, I think he had come from like a civil background as an attorney. And like he was not ready, but we had him for 2 years. He had ruled on all my substantive motions were massive. My change of venue motion, which was huge. Like we hired a polling company to poll the citizens of Douglas County to see where they were after 2 years of reading about my guy being the killer. And I know for a fact that and they're the district attorney out there, they obviously had a leak, because there was one guy that was the main crime beat reporter. And I mean, this guy just had information that there's no way you can get unless you're getting it from the cops and, or, the county attorney's office. So like, we knew it, we knew it. And like Allison, my wife, who tried it with me along with my father, and it was such a hard fought case, and it was a death penalty case. So I'm going hard. Like I am going to make the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they have the right guy before they kill him. That is my job. So, and I went with it just that hard. And I told them, like in the beginning, the press, I said, look, I don't have to be friends with these judges and these prosecutors or, anybody else in the criminal justice system in Omaha, Nebraska. So I'm coming in with a scorched earth attitude, because I have a job to do, because like you have that thing where, like if I'm practicing in my county, I want to stay in good stead with my judges, you know what I mean? Because like I have to worry about all the rest of my clients down the road over the years. And I don't want them, abhorring me walking into their courtroom because like I'm over the top, so we fought that case really hard. And so they kind of had a gag order, but it wasn't specific. And in retrospect, I wish that they would have, because they ended up like they have this rule. It's called the safe harbor rule, where, as prosecutors they'll leak information to the press because they want it to get out there. They do want to create that advantage for themselves in the public, and it's that situation where the fair harbor rule says that defense attorneys can try to counteract it to a certain extent, but like where that balance is really tough. And they ended up removing Allison from the case like 2 weeks before trial, 3 years in, and she was like our DNA expert. She's the one who had the best grasp on it. It was like a devastating move. We did like an interlocutory appeal, which if you guys don't know what that is out there, it's like when you appeal during the middle of the case, which is very rare. It got booted as being it wasn't timely, but it was, like in retrospect, I wish Allison wouldn't have had the ability to be able to do that, because she didn't get to try that case with me, and I lost my trial partner, so it was, and we felt that was a Sixth Amendment issue, big time, moving forward with the appellate process. And, we definitely got hometowned, we were Chicago lawyers in Omaha. They hated us, but I think at the end of the day, they realized that we did the job. I went there and I tried that case. So yeah, like the first thing that guy says is I was like, man, he's really like, and I'm talking about today, bringing it back to Delphi. Right. As soon as that Baldwin was out there talking, I'm like, man, he's really towing the line, like in terms of what he's saying, Yeah. Like he was dangerously close. Like if that was me in really Omaha close. Saying what he had said today, I would have been admonished by the judge. I have no doubt about it, So it's like, it did surprise me, but I think at the end of the day, and it did surprise me that it was the prosecutor coming with it, because it's like you said, that's not typically how it goes, man. I was shocked by that, because it's like typically it's the defense attorney that wants everybody to keep quiet and keep the prosecutors and law enforcement on a short leash.
And just following up on that, so it looks like the defense, their strategy right now is to try and fight a battle that seems like it might have already been lost, but not necessarily. I mean, obviously, most people think as soon as this guy was arrested, he's guilty. The prosecution must have overwhelming evidence, et cetera, et cetera. And the defense comes out today and says something which didn't really surprise me, but I don't know what it is about you guys, but it's like the public just believes you when you say things. So he comes out and says, well, there's no evidence here. There's absolutely no evidence. This is a weak case, and we're gonna challenge this, and he's gonna get bail and all this other stuff. And I thought that was an interesting approach to try and take that fight to the public's fear and almost create doubt in the mind of the listening public. Yeah. It was way like before you even have a trial.
Yeah, it was like the opposite of what typically happens. It's like typically like, if I've got a high publicity case, I'll always come in, initially saying that my client's innocent, but that's, before I've looked at the evidence. So I'm assuming that people that are interested in following what we do for a living or what we did for a living have an understanding that there's some gamesmanship in the beginning of it. I haven't dove into the evidence. I haven't gotten discovery. The first time that I'm speaking, I haven't gotten anything. I'm looking at that probable cause affidavit, and I'm seeing what they're laying out in terms of what they say they have. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to challenge that evidence. So yeah, man, that's what I mean. Like he came out firing, like he laid down the gauntlet, and to be honest, we don't know. I mean, he could be right. Because there is this train of thought out there that this arrest was done as just to get an arrest. And then, like I've heard people saying it, like more than a few, like that, they're challenging whether or not this is a legitimate arrest because they're refusing to release that information, which goes back to what you were saying initially. We need that transparency so that we know, that like if they say, look, we've got DNA, if they say, look, this is what we have an eyewitness, whatever the case may be, because I know that the judge received a redacted copy of, the probable cause affidavit today where they had redacted. It sounds like they just redacted the witness name. So it sounds like there's some witnesses out there. I think we're all anxious. I want justice for the girls. I really do, and I don't know if this is the right approach. I don't,
And I've been riding the fence on this case from the very beginning, because on the one hand, we've been critical really from the very beginning of how this case has been handled vis-a-vis releasing information to the public.
Right.
We thought and always thought that getting more information out there was better. You don't have to release everything. I understand hold back evidence better than most. I get that, but it just felt like they were holding too much back.
Yeah.
And it seems as though that hasn't changed, and they continue to do that. And to me, once you make the arrest, you should be ready to go to the public and to the courts and everybody else with what you've got. And if you're not ready to do that, then I'm kind of questioning why you made the arrest. And I understand there could have been exigent circumstances we don't know about. That's also a possibility. and I get that.
Right.
And of course, the conspiracy theories start to run wild too. You have the prosecutor saying there may be other people involved. What does that mean? Are we talking about a pedophile ring here? Are we talking about the Anthony Shots account? Are we talking about someone actually involved in the murders?
Right.
And I get
I'm with you,
you don't want to tip that person off if you're on the verge of arresting that person.
Right.
And people were like, well, if it doesn't mention another person, well, there could be information in the affidavit that when you read it, doesn't mean anything to you. But when the person they're looking at reads it, they're like, oh, shoot, they know. Right. And so I assume that's what they're talking about.
I mean, they have to be. Yeah. Because I was coming back and like somebody from Law and Crime hit me up and they're like, they want to do a sidebar with me, and she asked me, specifically about Anthony Shots or, Keegan. And she's like, well, like, what's your gut on that? And I'm like, well, I mean, based on what I've seen of him, he seems to be kind of a computer troll type of dude, like kind of weirdo perv guy, not a guy who's out there actively doing things. And that's based on my 20 years of handling some of the most horrific stuff you can ever handle in terms of child sex cases. They're the most abhorrent. Like as a personal, they're personally, I have 4 kids. Mm-hmm. So it's like, they're the hardest thing for me to handle.
They blow people's minds.
Yeah,
if the general public saw one of those cases, it would just blow their minds.
When Alice and I started the practice, 20 years ago, she's like, I'm never handling one of those cases ever, and then as you progress through it, it's like, you can only pick your clients so much,
and there are so many of them. There's
so many. It's such a prevalent, especially, when the online thing became a thing, when it used to be just, sicko perverts that were molesting kids. It didn't seem like the volume was as massive as it is now. But with the advent of the internet, which is one of the many things that I hate about the internet. There's things that I love, but there's a lot that I hate about it.
Yeah. I always tell people, no matter how, it's one of those things, a lot of times crime is overblown. Like people think there's a lot more violent crime than there is. People think that they're much more likely to be a victim of crime than they are.
Right.
That stuff, the child pornography stuff, the sexual abuse stuff, is the one area of crime where, however bad you think it is so much worse.
Worse, man. It is. Yeah. It's so prevalent, and it's like there was like out here, they have what they call child advocacy centers where basically, when kids make an outcry, it's not the cops that are interviewing these kids, they'll bring them to like they call them CACs out here. And you've got a licensed investigator there that's, trained to build rapport with these young children, so it's like, as we educate our children earlier and earlier in school as to, because back when I was growing up and it was like, don't take strangers from candy. And that was the extent of it. I didn't learn anything about that in school. Right. We've shifted out of necessity to, unfortunately, where our kids have to be taught things that we'd all love as parents to not have to expose our children to at an early age like that and like destroy the innocence of youth. But unfortunately, the reality of it is, I started teaching my kids. I'm like, if anybody ever tells you have to keep a secret, immediately, you come to me forthwith. You do not wait for one second. Anybody that tells you have to keep it secret from your parents or anybody, immediately, even if they haven't done anything, if they're telling you, if those words come out of their mouth, they're up to no good, So like I taught that to my children immediately, man, because it's unfortunately the world we live in, man, and it's, yeah. So I like, as far as like that Anthony Shots guy, to me, the only thing it could be is like a sex ring, like where he somehow got the girls out on that bridge that day, by, saying that he was going to meet them. And, and then it was some kind of planned thing, man. I just can't see him physically being there. I mean, and it's like the other thing that you were saying, like, we don't even know how the girls were like, what weapon was used,
Right.
I've read that the crime scene was beyond gruesome from whatever the murder sheet put out there. But it's like, we don't know, like, to me, because, Libby was a stout young girl, man. And she was smart. She's like, I can't see her getting pushed around by some schmuck without her putting up a fight. And when you've got 2 kids that are both, 13, 14-year-old that have the ability to run, it makes me think that more likely than not, there was a gun involved, that they were given directions, like I just can't see how one person can get two girls physically where they've got domain over them and then getting them down there to do the horrible things that happened. It reminds me of what went on with the West Memphis 3 thing. It's like, it always kind of befuddled me that it was one dude could have done that because you had 3 boys. You know what I'm saying? It's
Right.
like, well, how are you controlling the other 2 while you're doing your dirty deeds with the one? It's just like, when you think about it logically, and you and I have both done this. I mean, like when I dive into these cases, I have to think about how it could have happened. Like logically, could it actually have happened the way that they're saying that it happened? And when there's no ligature marks, so that
Right.
nobody was tied up. Like if the physical evidence just isn't showing you what you need to see in order for that narrative to fit, I'm torn whether or not that I want them to release it. But I mean, obviously I'm dying to know what they have, just out of like pure interest. But, I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, I don't know. I'm just fascinated by the fact the bail hearings in February. I really
Dude,
am.
it's crazy. It's crazy.
And it's interesting to hear you say that, because I thought maybe I just didn't know how things were done in Indiana and the Midwest, right? But I mean, that's a long time for a bail hearing.
It's insanely.
A bail hearing is you're demanding immediate release, basically. I feel like he could almost file a habeas corpus motion and be like, I'm being held. I've asked for a bail hearing and they're telling me I'll get one in 3 months.
Dude,
3 months?
Dude, it's crazy. Theoretically, he could have gone in there and they could have done a speedy demand. He's in custody. They would have had to go to trial
before the bail hearing.
Before the bail hearing, man. It's crazy. Because
Right.
And you, like, for your listeners out there and your patrons, essentially that means that he is 100% not stepping foot out of that jail until at least February 17th, if at any point, but he doesn't even have an opportunity to do it until that date. And we're talking 3 months. It's unheard of, really. Like it's crazy.
And I
You're
know
right.
everybody's but he killed
I
2
think
people. He deserves it. I get that. But step back from a moment for that and imagine you were arrested for something you didn't do. Just hold on to that for a second.
Right.
And you at least want to get bail so you can, while you wait your day in court, where you, as a person who's presumed innocent until you're proven guilty, get to make that argument. And all you're asking is for a judge to have to evaluate whether or not the state has enough evidence to hold you during the couple years that it's probably going to take to try this case, whether or not you're a flight risk or a danger. That's all you're asking for.
Right.
Is to have your day in court, to have a judge say, sorry, dude, you're being accused of killing 2 people. They got some pretty good evidence. You're staying in jail. Good luck at trial. That's all you're asking for. And they're like, okay, we'll let you do that in 3 months.
Right.
It's just,
because
it blows my mind.
where does that bring your brain though? Like in terms of like what they have, you know what I'm saying? Because if I'm the prosecutor and I know I've got a strong case, I've got no problem saying, dude, let's just have the bail hearing. I'm ready right now. Because I was not getting the impression that it was the defense that was going in there. They filed. I don't know that they asked for a date on it. You know what I mean? I did not get that impression that it was like, because typically, like when you file a motion, the state obviously has the opportunity to respond to that in writing. And the judge will ask, do you want to respond to that in writing? Or are you ready to go on this? If I'm the state and I've got some rock solid evidence and I know that there's no way that they're letting this guy out based on what we have and based on the fact that it's 2 murder charges, I'm ready to roll on that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the fact that it got pushed so far just made my mind spin. Like I was like, man, what is going on with this thing?
Well, I think the one thing I'll say about that, as far as the strength of the evidence, the prosecution and law enforcement in this case have been so secretive that it could just be this is a way to continue the secrecy. Because like you said, once that hearing happens, cards are going to be on the table. There's not going to be any holding stuff back.
That's it.
So I think it could just be, this is just a way for them to continue to keep the evidence under wraps. Worst case, the judge, after some period of time, I was on somebody else's show yesterday, and what I said would happen was the prosecution would give the judge a redacted affidavit to review, and it would take the judge forever to do it. And that would keep the affidavit secret for a little bit longer.
Right.
At some point, that'll be released. Probably not. I mean, who knows? Might not be released till next year. Right. I mean, the judge, it's just the judge's timeline. She could release it tomorrow. She could release it in January.
Exactly. She gave no indication of any kind of date certain at all, and it
really puts the press who's leading the charge on this in a rough place, because it's under submission to the judge. So what do you do if you're the press, right? Like, you have to wait some reasonable period of time before you try and seek some sort of appeal or whatever, or you file a motion, a status motion. I mean, the thing, if you want to, it's so easy to slow down the process. I mean, the legal process, the wheels of justice grind slow. I mean, you can take forever to do anything.
I say it all the time on my pod, man. It's so true, though. It's so true.
But I'll tell you what normally doesn't grind slow is the bail hearing.
Exactly. That's usually immediate. That's the one area that grinds very quickly. Yeah, man. It was because when I first did kind of like an update, like on our side show, and we call it the docket. It's a funny story. I was telling my producer, Darren, I'm like, you know what? Because we do the serialized thing. And I'm like, there's so much going on. Like, it's driving me nuts that I can't talk about any of these cases because I'm doing serialized cases. And, so I wanted to sound off on some of these things. And then when this story broke, I was like, man, I really want to, like, that was the impetus of me starting the whole docket thing. Like, I want to talk about this case. And yeah, it's just procedurally, it's a really weird case, man. It really is. It's like they're going to have time restraints they're going to be running up against in terms of indicting him. Like, I don't know if they're going to a grand jury or they're having to pull. Like, I have no idea what they're going to do there.
That's the thing I don't understand. And I dug around in Indiana statutes trying to find something that gave some sort of time limit about when you have to have the preliminary hearing.
Me too.
And it just doesn't seem like there's anything.
And I called my buddy who's like a pretty prominent criminal defense guy in Indy. And I'm like, yo, dude, I'm like, what is going on over there? What is happening? I'm like, why did they seal these documents? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I've been practicing here for 20 plus years and they've never done this in a case. So it's completely out of the ordinary. Like, there is nothing that is going on that is normal to what typically goes on in Indiana courts. So it's like a whole different thing. And I have to think that, they're allowing just the publicity of the case and how much, interest there is in it, that they're allowing that to steer the ship. And I don't know if that's the right way to go, but, I guess we'll find out, man. But from the legal side of it, I'm assuming that his defense attorneys are aware of what we're not aware of in terms of a drop dead date by when they have to have him indicted, before they have an issue, so I don't know, man.
It's just, I practice in the federal system. Most people know that. In the federal system, everything's so much clearer. If you arrest somebody in a complaint on a probable cause, you got 30 days.
Yep.
You got 30 days to indict them. And that's just the rule, right? And when you do the bail, the bond hearing, it's like you arrest them, they show up, they have their initial appearance. You seek to detain them. They ask not to be detained. The judge asks if you need extra time as the government. You say yes. You get 3 days.
Yes.
You get 3 extra days. And then you have the hearing.
Exactly.
And at the hearing, you got to put on enough evidence to show that they need to be detained for the
federal court, man, is a whole different.
It's a whole different. Yeah. I did some stuff in state court before this, but federal court's so much better.
So much better. And like, you're just dealing with brighter people. Like at every level, the U.S. attorneys are smarter, the judges are smarter. You're just dealing with, and it's run so well and it's so efficient. There is no, like, I was telling people on my update about, the Delphi case. I'm like, look, I don't want everyone getting upset because there is no way that trial is going on May 20th.
No way.
There is a 0% chance. I'm like, in a state court with a case like this thing is going to be 2.5, 3 years before
if it goes in 2023, I will be stunned.
I will
be stunned. This is a winter 2023 trial, I'll be stunned. I'm thinking 2024.
I will buy you a steak dinner if it goes in 2023. There is no way. There's no way. Just no way.
They're not having the bond hearing until February. They're not going to turn around the next month and have a trial.
Exactly. What an amazing point. That is, they're not even having the bond hearing. They're not going to have the trial a month later. Yeah, it's crazy, man. It is absolutely crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I'm all in. I'm going to keep driving down there. I'm going to get down there earlier because I definitely want to get in for the bond hearing.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like they're going to do like a full blown witnesses, like very, you're not typical in terms of what they're planning on doing is what it sounds like. So I don't know. It's weird.
I want to get up there some for it too. I'd like to see some of it.
You should, man. It's like, for me, it's not a bad drive. It's like, it was like 2.5 hours. So I got up at like 5 but I lose an hour because it's Eastern Standard Time. So, right. And I always forget to factor that in. Like right. I realized it when I was like halfway, like for as many times I've driven over there, I always forget that I'm going to lose that hour. So then I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to get there at 8:45. There's no way I'm getting in if they are letting people in, which held true, but it didn't really. So once I knew that you couldn't operate a phone in there, it really didn't make any difference other than, me trying to hunt down somebody that I felt like had a grasp of what was actually going on in there. Like I was trying to find like some like court rats, like guys that are just, like people that are like into that and like know what the language means and procedurally what was happening. Because like just reporters screw it up all the time. So I like wasn't trying to ask them,
And I've heard that in Indiana, they don't televise trials. Is that right? Do you know?
I don't know, man. I honestly don't know. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I think that every trial should be televised. Like, and you give people that. I mean, with the technology we have now, it doesn't have to be some high profile case. Because you and I both know, I mean, when you're stuck in the middle of the case, I mean, they're all interesting. It's the human condition. Right. I mean, it just is. It's like every case.
It's the ultimate reality television show.
It really is, man. You can't get any more real than that. It's like, it wasn't my dad, but it was one of his friends. He's like, there's no small cases. There's just small lawyers. I was like, yeah. I think there's some truth to that. He had two like things that stuck with me. He's like, never trust a lawyer with dirty shoes. And there's no small cases. There's only small lawyers. So like those two things have stuck with me for 20 years. I thought that it was pretty apt advice because I always found myself looking at lawyers' shoes and my own. I'm like, ooh, mine are looking pretty ragged.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the only thing we learned today is that this case continues to be very, very strange.
Yeah.
It's a very unusual.
I mean, what's your gut on this thing? I mean, like, do you... Because let me ask you, did you hear this story that dropped? And like, I always take everything with a grain of salt that I see, online through report. But so apparently Richard Allen back on the 13th, back in 2017, February 13th, when the girls went missing, had gone to a conservation officer and made an admission that he was in the area. I don't know if he said I was on the bridge, but he said he was in the area. And then this thing got buried. Like no one saw it. So Indiana State Police was getting really irritated with the local sheriffs, and they're like, they sent a crew out there like, I want you to go dig through the files again. And then this is like, I'm talking like 2 weeks ago, or like less than, they end up digging up this report that this guy Richard Allen had gone to a conservation, made this admission that he was there, didn't see the girls, quote unquote, and then, but, to have that existing and to have that not be, I don't know if the guy's been on the radar. It's so weird because like you started hearing rumors that there was going to be arrest. You remember? Like, right. Like I'd say like the beginning of the summer, oh, there's going to be an arrest today. And then that didn't happen. So I'm like, what is going on with this, man? It's like, there's something weird about it. Like, and I cannot put my finger on it. Like the whole way they're handling it, like, cause it's like you say, I get there is a rationale by not giving certain information, because if you have a situation where you can get somebody in custody and you're questioning them and you want them to be able to say something, as a police officer who's conducting the investigation that only the killer would know. So that's, one of the main reasons you want to keep things from the public. So it's not public knowledge, because if you have the opportunity, the guy doesn't lawyer up and they're able to interrogate him and they start talking and the guy and a crafty investigator is going to know the way to ask it to where they're kind of trapping him into giving them the answer that they're looking for, where it's only something the killer would know. That's one of the primary reasons why a lot of times law enforcement will hold stuff back, and this is just like they're holding everything back.
Right.
It's like, I mean, if you look at it, like, really, what do we know?
We
haven't even seen the whole, like, I think that the video's longer.
I do too.
I think
it absolutely is longer. There's no question it's longer.
I mean, like 43 seconds. Like, I don't know, man. It's crazy. I guess we'll see how it plays out. Yeah, you should take a field trip. You should
I should take a field trip.
Totally should.
I'll say this. I think people want this case to stick, obviously.
Yes.
And because they want it to stick, they find themselves being very concerned. They go to the worst case scenarios with this whole arrest, and that, they really didn't have anything, but they arrested him because they were hoping he would just confess, and he didn't confess, and now they're totally screwed.
Right.
I don't think that's what happened.
Me either.
Now, I could imagine a situation in which what you said is true, that they wanted to arrest him and they hoped that he would flip on somebody else, and he has not.
Right.
And because he has not, the investigation is sort of ongoing because they just don't believe it's him alone. They think there was somebody else involved. Maybe they've always thought there were two people involved.
Right.
That has always been a rumor in this case, is that the police thought there were two people involved in this. I
mean, when you think about the logistics, I mean, it kind of common sense kind of lends itself to that theory.
You brought up West Memphis 3. I mean, that's why I've never thought. It's like, could it have been one person? I guess, but there are 3 victims. The whole control issue.
Like, Terry Hobbs. So what is he doing? Is he taking their shoelaces and like binding 2 of them up while he's doing, or did he take like a rock and knock 2 of them out? But like, how are you corralling 3 kids, like that will be running for the woods, man? I mean, that has never like added up to me, which was always kind of one of the things that, made sense in terms of like, and I don't think it was the boys, but with that case, I want the evidence tested. I just don't know why they will not test the evidence, man. I don't
really going down a rabbit hole now. I will say this,
man,
it's the thing,
dude.
The one thing about Jesse Misskelley's confession that made sense was that Moore ran, and he had to go and get him. And that was the thing that always made the most sense about his confession. A lot of it doesn't make any sense, but that one thing I was always like, that feels like exactly what would happen.
It feels true, right?
Going back, and that's why I've always thought in the Delphi case that the girls ran, that it got out of control, and that was one of the reasons the murder happened, because he never intended to kill them there. Maybe he intended to take them back to the this ring we're talking about, or to Keegan Klein, or whatever, right? But I don't know, we're totally down the speculation trail now.
But that's all we can do.
That's all we can do.
That's what choice they've left us.
And they complain so much about in their motion to gag everybody. They say there are all these news stories, and a lot of them aren't true, and there's all this fake information. Well, the one way you can prevent fake information is to give some real information. Yeah, I mean, and I get that this is a delicate point, but come on, there's got to be some balance. And right now, they are completely on the secrecy side. There's no balance whatsoever.
I mean, they're just not disclosing anything, I mean, it's like, and it's like you said, like at the beginning of this, man, when they make the arrest, you have to assume that they're ready to disclose. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, and look, you and I both know investigations will continue after an arrest always, I mean, that goes without saying, but like you had to have enough in order to get them in custody, to get the arrest warrant, like
in my job, we don't do a search warrant unless we're ready, because once you do the search warrant, that's the end of the secret investigation. I mean, obviously, police show up at your house and knock on the door, there's an investigation of you. Yeah,
they're on to you.
And so this notion that somehow they're going to maintain the secrecy of this investigation at this point is just absurd.
It's crazy. Like it's impossible, and there's just too much interest in it. It's not like some under the radar case, and there's like a lot of stuff going on, man. I mean, there's the Delphi thing, there's the tragedy that went on in Idaho, which is another crazy case, man. I'm trying to dig in that, and it's like it seems like the cops are jumping to conclusions like initially out there, like they made a big deal out of the fact that the kind of the main cop had said, well, we don't think anybody needs to worry there. I'm like, what makes you say that, man?
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like everybody needs to worry,
Right.
So but that's a crazy case. I'll be looking forward to your episode on that. I know you're going to have one on those. That's like, have you dug into that at all? That's
just a little bit, just enough to realize the fact that they haven't made an arrest now tells me there's something about that case, because if it was someone they knew, you got to think, because if you murder 4 people with a knife and there's blood, there's so much blood, it's like
in screaming
out of the house.
And screaming, and 2 people survived, apparently sleeping through it.
The whole thing.
I mean, you and I, like, a knife fight is absolutely brutal.
Look, knives are really deadly, but it takes a little while to die from a knife.
It does.
It's not instantaneous.
And defensive wounds tell the tale.
The perpetrator in that case they'd have defensive wounds all over them, and they would have been covered in blood.
Blood, just drenched.
There's just no way.
Dude, that's my Garcia case, man. Like, I'm telling you, like, this guy, both sets of homicides. The first one was all knives, and I'm talking the jugular was severed, the carotid was severed. I mean, we're talking like just massive amounts of blood going everywhere. And the same with, in the second set where Mary Brumbeck fought absolutely like to the core of her being to try to fight this guy off. I mean, she had like 30 defensive wounds on her hands and arms, which means she's blocking, I mean, think about that. Like, think about like a knife fight and like, so yeah, right. It's crazy like that. There's something so bizarre going on because it was late. They'd all been out. It sounded like they'd all been partying. They hit a food truck late. They all get back like around 1:30, 1:45 in the morning, and something goes out. Like the one girl's texting her boyfriend. He's not answering because he's sleeping.
And she was texting and calling him apparently until right before this happened.
Yeah.
People are like, well, they were all asleep. Well, she was on the phone like 10 minutes before this happened.
Exactly. Like from what I saw, it was like until like 2:26 a.m. Like she like for almost a half an hour, she was hitting her boyfriend up, texting and calling, because I guess her sister came and made a statement. She said, look, that's what my sister does. If she's trying to get a hold of you, she's a habitual caller. She'll call over and over and over until you pick up. So yeah, that's it. And then the other case, I don't know, have you heard about this thing in Iowa with the Lucy Studi, who is claiming that her father
was a serial killer?
Yeah, 50, but she's saying 50 to 70 people are buried around that land. I mean, she's talking like 3 decades, and she's been trying to tell people for 45 years. It's not like she just came about, like she said that she's been trying to tell people since 2nd grade. Like I hunted her down because it was close. So I'm like, I reached out to her because Newsweek had broken the story. And, I was like, well, I would really like to cover this case if I can, because if it's true, because you've got a sister that lives in Lincoln, Nebraska, that's saying my sister is full of it. There is absolutely no truth to anything that she's saying. And I start thinking, I'm like, why would somebody, and this Lucy Studi has come out unequivocally saying, I am not looking for any money. She's like, I am not trying to ring the bell. I'm not trying to get a movie deal. I want these victims. I want them to have their names back, and I want their families to know, I mean, she like, there is not, and I've spoken with her for hours, and she does not strike me as somebody who is at all mentally ill.
I was about to ask that.
She and I've been dealing with folks that are dealing with mental illness for a long time. If I'm being frank, that my biggest beef with prosecutors is just always trying to get them to acknowledge that like mental health and mental illness is a real thing. And it's typically the impetus for a lot of the crimes that are committed. I mean, I'm like, I'll have a guy who's clearly out of it, and I'm like, you're seeing the same human being that I'm seeing, right? And it depends on the age of the like, because if I'm dealing with,
I'll just note, I literally said that in the episode we released today.
Oh, you did? Yeah. I mean,
that a lot of crime is connected to mental illness.
It really is, man. I mean, it's like, so I'm thankful, frankly, because a lot of the courts around us here in Illinois are they now have mental health courts where they're acknowledging that it's a thing because they need to, because it is. We know so little about the brain. I think that's what the problem is. I mean, we really do.
That's
It's like
true. Yeah.
we really don't. It's like they had no idea how to classify Gacy. When like my dad's trying to find 5 or 6 psychiatrists because it was an insanity defense case. It was near impossible. They're like, there's nothing in the DSM that this guy like fits.
Right.
Like he doesn't fit into anything neatly, which one of the psychologists came up. That's like borderline personality came from the Gacy case. That's where he developed it because he was like a mixture of like 4 different things.
Yeah. The catch-all. Right.
Yeah, the catch-all. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, man, I could talk to you all night. I mean,
Dude,
I don't know if you
no
all
question,
night,
man. It's
but
been awesome. It's been a blast.
no, this is great. We'll have to do it again sometime.
I'd love to, man. I'd really love to. It was a blast. Yeah. And I want to encourage you to take a field trip. Like, we'll hang out, man. Like, come down, like, come to Delphi. Like, you at least got to come when it goes to trial.
Yeah. I mean, definitely going to do that.
Because it's cute little town.
I've heard.
Courthouse.
I'd like to, I would try. I see pictures of that bridge all the time. And I think there's no way I could walk across that bridge. I don't know if you've been to the bridge or not.
Dude, like, it's so funny you said that. Like, my plan was, because I've driven, like, I've got friends that live in Indy, so I've driven by Delphi a million times. And, when I kind of like, because I called my PI and I'm like, because he's been into the Delphi case since the get. And I'm like, he went down actually for the presser on Halloween. And I'm like, I got kids, dude. I can take my kids trick or treating. I'm not going to the presser. I'll watch it on TV, or videotape it and send it to me, whatever. So, I called him. I'm like, I'm going down, I'm like, do you want to come with me? And he's like, I've got some services I've got to do, whatever he had to do. We had to work. So I ended up going down alone. And I'm like, he had told me that he walked the bridge the last time he went down on Halloween. And he's like, man, I just can't describe what it felt like. It just felt like nothing I'd ever, like, the eeriness of it it was like palpable, like he says, you can feel it, So I was going to go until like the law and crime folks called me and they're like, hey, you have to be on a computer. You can't do it on your phone. I'm like, well, I don't have my laptop. So I guess I'm going to race 2.5 hours home to make it. So I had to truncate that part of the trip, but I was contemplating, I at least wanted to drive over there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if I would have been able to walk it either. Cause I get like on that Garcia case, man, I don't know if I was going to be able to handle it. Cause it's just like, I'm kind of, I'm a delicate soul to be honest with you. I am. Like I get real, I'm a very emotional person. So yeah, like I'm pretty empathetic. So it's like, but I kind of feel like I want to, I feel like I need to, but I don't know. I might back away from it when I get down there. I don't know, but I'd love if you came and join me, man.
Well, absolutely.
Like you'd have to come down. Like we'd want to spend the night, get like a room somewhere close. Like, cause it's like, I think there were 3 rows of seating, behind like, where they allocated for the family. So,
right. Yeah. It's going to be tough to get in. I mean, there's definitely going to be like
it's going to be
a lottery
tough.
system.
There's going to have to be like,
maybe by then they'll have decided that it's worth doing overflow rooms. So at least you can watch it.
I mean, you got like, cause I went up, I knew the answer. I went up to one of the cops. I'm like, is there any chance you guys did like a closed caption? Like, like any kind of like overflow room? And they're like, nah. You kidding?
No, why would we do that?
Not a chance, buddy. I was like, thanks, man. I knew the answer, but yeah. But hey, man, I really, really appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed this. I knew that we'd have fun once we started talking because just it's fun. Like I love the concept of you and I being able to talk and kind of coming from both sides. And, it's like I have a lot of respect for prosecutors in general. I mean, they're both sides of the aisle are equally important, and we need good ones on both sides out there to make sure that this thing that we try to call justice so that it works to the best of its ability. I mean, I haven't found a system that's better than ours anywhere else in the world. As flawed as it is, but it's the best that there is out there. So yeah, man, I'm grateful you had me on.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. You've been awesome. We're going to do this again in the future. Maybe next time we can have Alice on as well. You'll love Alice. Awesome. Everybody loves Alice. But I do want to thank
enjoyed it
Bob
thoroughly.
for hanging out with us. If you guys haven't listened to Defense Diaries, you need to listen to Defense Diaries, and we will definitely hook up with Bob later. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Prosecutors Legal Briefs. We'll be back next week. Next week, we're actually going to be talking about defense attorneys. So Bob, I promise it's not all bad. So.
Thank you. That's all I needed to hear. That's all I needed to hear. Thanks, man. I appreciate you, Brett. And thanks for all you patrons out there that hung out with us. It was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everybody who joined for this live recording. And we will see you next week. Until then, I am Brett, and this has been the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. See, Alice usually starts this, so I got to figure out how to do it. Okay.
You're doing the intro.
I know.
It's exciting.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. I know it's...
Wow. I was waiting. That was me doing the drums. Are there drums in the song? I don't think there are drums.
There are drums. There's absolutely
Are there
drums. Oh, yeah.
Okay, maybe there is.
Dong.
Oh, there are. Yeah, I guess so. Or is that bass?
Well, there's
Oh,
bass
bass
following
there.
along with the drums, too.